What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. Okay, so we are picking up with actually what I think is one of the coolest stories in DC Rebirth so far with Batman, which is called The Gift. And this actually sees the return of Booster Gold. Now, Booster Gold also did appear in the booster shot with Superman, but we haven't really covered that yet. That actually comes in the aftermath of the Oz effect. So we'll probably cover that sometime in the next couple weeks or so. But when it comes to like this is really, I think this does a better job of kind of hitting home at the nature of Booster Gold, really for like a lot of new fans. And the reason why is because for people who are getting into DC Rebirth or really getting into DC Comics because of DC Rebirth, there's a very good chance that you have no idea who Booster Gold is. Now, he was in like New 52, and you did see him there, but really a lot of fans' mind, at least how they think of Booster Gold, really comes from like before the New 52, right? Like it comes with the post-crisis landscape. And the reason why was because that was when Booster Gold really blew up. I mean, Booster Gold was introduced in 1986, so he's a post-crisis character. But the idea here is that when you had the original Justice League back in Brave and the Bold, and then they got their own solo series, really from like 1960 going forward, when Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, DC canceled the Justice League in its entirety. They got rid of the traditional Justice League team, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, all that kind of good stuff, the Flash, and they relaunched it under Keith Giffen and JMD Mateus as Justice League International. And the reason for this was because by the time Crisis on Infinite Earths happened, the core members of the Justice League were hugely popular. I mean, they didn't really need a Justice League team. It was cool to have, but the concept of the team could be used for other purposes, namely bolstering the popularity of characters who just really couldn't sell their own books because the name Justice League was so huge. And so handing it over to Giffen and Mateus and then having them revamp it as Justice League International meant the name remained the same, but the roster changed. Now, of course, in order to keep wary readers from walking away in its entirety, they threw Batman on as leader of the team, and that was enough to keep people interested. And then once, the roster began to take form and you had like Guy Gardner and you had Booster Gold and you had Blue Beetle, the kind of comedy / serious nature of the stories proved to be hugely popular. Justice League International was massive when it first showed up. People loved it. Now, as time progressed, people began to lose interest. And that's the reason why in 1998, Justice League International was just basically wiped away. All the Justice League teams were removed in their entirety. And then you got JLA by Grant Morrison, Justice League of America. It was the return of the original Justice League team. But nonetheless, when it came to the character of Booster Gold, he was really popular because one, he was a glory hound, and two, like he was basically a crook. He was a guy from the future who would use his knowledge of current events because he was from the future and showed up and then was just like, I know how to save everything. And it was funny for what it was, but it was really more the relationship between Blue Beetle and Ted Kord that helped to make Booster Gold hugely popular. Like that's really what kind of set things off. The sort of like, buddy cop duo that the two of them formed made them wildly popular for a lot of fans. And so really like that aspect of Blue Beetle almost always remained. There were a lot of great stories that dealt with the idea that he felt like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders, but for the most part, it was just kind of like that comedic element. And so he always had that little bit of humor here. So what this story does is it initially does not pick up with Booster Gold. Instead, it picks up with Green Lantern. It picks up with Hal Jordan. And he basically offs himself, which is actually kind of wild because it's like right off the bat, I mean, one, he's kind of grinning and looks pretty sadistic and screwed up. But two, he's just kind of like, look, the rings don't let you take yourself out. But if you overcome the willpower of the ring, like you can do whatever you want to do. And like that falls in line. Like we know that from the Green Lantern mythos. Now, of course, we end up finding out he does this in the face of Booster Gold. But this is kind of crazy because everything is screwed up right now. And it's kind of wild because it's like, what in the world is going on? And so ultimately you end up having Blue Beetle who's just kind of like, okay, look, we got to go find Batman. We got to go find Batman and we have to show him, everything that's going on and what have you. And then of course he's taken out from behind by Batman, but Batman's wearing guns. And so right off the bat, the idea that Batman's strapped with like massive bullets, he's got grenades, he's got, these huge guns. He looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger from Terminator blended with Cable from Marvel Comics, which is actually pretty cool. He looks like the Punisher. Can we all just admit here that if Batman became the Punisher, it would probably be the coolest thing ever? Like that's a story we need to have. But basically it's this idea that it's almost reminiscent of Flashpoint. When you had the Flashpoint event and we got this alternate reality, we had a circumstance where Bruce Wayne died instead of his parents and Thomas Wayne became Batman and Martha Wayne became the Joker. It was an amazing story when it came out. It was maybe it was like a 3 or 4 part story. I think it was 4. But with this thing, it's cool because this version of Batman is just like ruthless and is very reminiscent of how Thomas Wayne was. Thomas Wayne was cutthroat. cutthroat. He would kill people. He would do whatever he had to do. But while you end up having like Booster Gold and Batman who are facing off against one another, we transition over to Jason Todd. And what we end up finding out here is Jason Todd is not the Red Hood. Instead, what's been going on here is Jason Todd is actually like, he owns a tire company. And this tire company specializes in basically creating tires that shock jokers from stealing people's rims, basically. Now, again, this is cool because this is blending a lot of small things together, right? Like, I mean, if you look at DC, like if you've been reading DC for a while, then like it's taking all these little threads, all these little tidbits and sort of bringing them all together. For example, the concept of the Jokers, that probably comes from Batman Beyond. In Batman Beyond, the Joker had long since been dead, and in his place came like the Joker gang. And so you had like all these people, men and women, who would dress up as Jokers and then go out and commit crimes. Also notice here that it's basically Joker with like a rod in his hand, which is kind of like a throwback basically to like the Death in the Family story arc where Jason Todd originally died in DC Comics. But this is kind of cool because what this indicates here is that of course Jason Todd never became Red Hood, which indicates that Jason Todd was never adopted by Batman. If that wasn't the case, then we don't really know where he ends up coming from. Instead, we just know he kind of becomes a tire mechanic. The other half of this is Booster Gold talking to his machine Skeets. Now, Skeets is the means by which Booster Gold travels back and forth through time. And we'll actually get a little bit of clarification on that here in a minute, so we won't spoil it for right here and now. But the thing that I want you guys to notice here is really the relationship between the two of them, because this was a hallmark of Booster Gold. The fact that he and his machine would bicker with each other. Booster Gold was always a character who seemed kind of childish. And when taken out of context, and really when sort of just thrown out there by himself, it can be hit and miss. In a lot of ways, he can be like Deadpool. I think the success of Booster Gold really comes into play when someone takes his character and they throw it into a comic where he has someone to bounce off of. And that's why Booster Gold always works so well, because in a lot of ways, the relationship between like Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, or like Booster Gold and Batman, or even Superman is very much akin to like Cable and Deadpool. They just kind of bounce off each other. It's serious combined with like humor. Now, Booster Gold's taken by Batman, kind of whisked away. And it's kind of like hung from a balcony. And that's when you end up finding out this Batman is actually Dick Grayson. Now, again, this is one of the things that I love about stories like this, is because we're not going to find out how Dick Grayson became Batman. And that's why things like this are so cool. Why the miniseries of like White Knight and things like Nightwing's New Order. The reason why those little things and tidbits like this are so cool is because they keep us wanting more. And that's actually a genius move. To kind of sidetrack here for a second, one of the big issues that Marvel's been struggling with for the last while is they've really kind of reverted back to where DC used to be maybe 50 or 60 years ago, in the sense that they're like very, very linear stories. And Marvel was like that when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were writing stories, but they're very linear stories. It's just kind of like, you know, here's an event that sets off the story, and then here's a story happening, and then the story ends. Done. And like, that's it. It doesn't really give you any reason to want anything more than what you already see. But with stories like this, the reason why these are a great reprieve is because you're just kind of like, well, then how in the hell did Dick Grayson become Batman? Where's Bruce Wayne? Like, what's going on with Bruce Wayne's character? Like, those are the kind of things that you want to know. And they keep us coming back and they keep us wanting more. And then we end up tweeting the hell out of the writer, give us the answer to this question. Give us a one-shot, man, like do something. That's where we kind of get a real cool interest with those things. Now, again, the other thing to bear in mind here is that when Booster Gold makes his escape, one thing to remember is that while he is a glory hog, and while he is somewhat nonsensical, he is not incapable. Booster Gold is very much a capable superhero in a wide variety of different ways. What we also end up doing here, and this is really more of an aside than anything else, we actually pick up with Duke Thomas. And this is kind of interesting here. I think this was really done just for the purpose of showing where Duke is and what Duke's doing, but he hasn't really had that many significant roles in DC Comics that there's a reason for fans to care about what's going on with him here. But again, it is kind of a cool thing to see. I mean, at this point, Duke Thomas has basically had his head cut open, he's been lobotomized, and someone's just kind of spoon feeding him, and that's it. But the fact remains here, what we end up doing is switching over to Bruce Wayne. And that's when we find out in this line, in this current set of circumstances, Bruce Wayne never became Batman. And the reason why Bruce Wayne never became Batman is because Bruce Wayne's parents never died. Thomas and Martha Wayne are still very much alive. And Booster Gold shows up and he's like, hey man, like I got a present for you. What I did is I went back in time and I saved your parents from dying. And so like your parents are alive now because of what I've done. But I did that because you're getting married and I wanted you to see what happiness would be like. So like now we have to go back and we have to like let your parents die. It's kind of screwed up. It's kind of messed up. Like, hey man, this life you're living is a lie, but this is the gift that I gave you. And now I'm going to take this gift and take it away. It's like giving a person $1 million and just saying, I wanted you to see what it was like to hold $1 million. Thanks. And then just take the $1 million and leave. But like, that's Booster Gold. Now, the funny thing about this is the response of Bruce Wayne is like, I've always known that that was the case. I've always had this itch under my skin. There's always just like this phrase on the edge of my tongue. I knew that something wasn't right here. It was an itch that I couldn't scratch. Things are not the way they're supposed to be. And so the result is that he's like, okay, I mean, I guess things could go back to normal, but I don't want them to. So he destroys Skeets, traps Booster Gold in the modern day and leaves him there, and then just leaves and goes back to his life. And we pick up a year later, and then we end up having Booster Gold, who breaks into Arkham Asylum to free Catwoman. And so picking up with Thomas and Bruce, it's kind of cool here, but we also end up finding out some somewhat seedy things are going on. Of course, Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, basically is president of the United States, but still, like, Thomas has done some seedy things. And that's the interesting thing about this, is when you go through and you look at the various iterations of Thomas Wayne in DC Comics, and even when you go back and you look at like the origin of Batman, the indication is that Thomas Wayne was always a good guy. Now, a lot of that was because we didn't get a whole lot about him, and it's only really in like expanded flashbacks, which is to say flashbacks that give you more information about his dad, that there seems to be the possibility that maybe he did some seedy things, that maybe he wasn't really as legit as we thought he was. But still, like in this, he's been working to try to make Gotham a better place, but there's just kind of something off about him. But in the midst of all this, because of the fact that everything's crashing down, because villains are going awry, because everything's going crazy here, what we end up having is, one, he suffers a heart attack, and two, the revelation is that like Oswald Cobblepot is going to bring in the forces of Ra's al Ghul, who have basically conquered Europe and Asia, combine them into a single continent, and then use those forces to essentially quell any kind of rebel threat that exists inside the United States. But the hidden letters here, the hidden wording, the invisible ink really kind of says that like Ra's al Ghul, like once he gets in, he will not leave. And so he'll get his forces in here, and then he could potentially conquer the United States. Not only that, of course, picking up with Booster Gold, he's really kind of rambling on to Selina Kyle, but we start learning some things that are going on behind the scenes, that when Booster Gold traveled back in time and stopped the parents of Bruce Wayne from dying, that of course that meant Bruce Wayne never became Batman. And because Bruce Wayne never became Batman, Bruce Wayne never joined the Justice League. And because Bruce Wayne never joined the Justice League, that meant that there was no one there to save the Justice League when they first faced off against Starro. And when that happened, Starro killed the Justice League. They're all dead. And so it's kind of crazy. I mean, you end up having like, Green Lantern, of course, who was alive, but like the indication seems to be here, Wonder Woman, presumably Martian Manhunter, the Flash, they're all dead. But again, this is one of those things where it's just like, well, I mean, like, I want to see him, I want to see this climactic battle, and I want to see how it happened. I want to see how they died. Like, those are the kind of things that are kind of interesting, because I'll be honest with you guys, if there's a story where like the Justice League dies, or like a superhero team that I really love, if there's like this dystopian future where everything goes bad and they die, like, I want to see how it happens. Like, I want to see, I want to see that take place. But Booster Gold's idea is, okay, we have to take you, Catwoman, we have to get you to Bruce Wayne, because Bruce Wayne's going to marry you. And if we get you to him, then everything will be fixed and everything will be fine, and the two of you will get married. And so his line of logic is, I'll take you to Bruce Wayne and everything will be sorted out. And so of course, picking up with Bruce and Martha, this is actually one of those instances when you see a harder side of Martha that you never really see. Martha was always kind of given to us as like this tender person. Of course, it's kind of funny because she puts on this hard edge. The doctor comes out and says, if you'll come with me. And she's like, well, what about my husband? He's like, well, I need you to follow me. And her immediate response is, we are Waynes of Gotham City. We do not follow anybody. You tell me what I want to know, not now, but right now. And it's cool because it's just like, bam, Martha Wayne, just boom, just like that. And I like that. I like seeing that hard, gritty edge of Martha Wayne because it's like a side you never really see. And it's kind of a way to say, look, like the Waynes are still very powerful in the city of Gotham. They're still like probably the #1 family in Gotham City. They're a very big name. And so again, we end up finding out that Thomas survived the experience. He's not dead. But then from there, you basically end up picking up with like Booster and Catwoman traveling to the house of really to like Wayne Manor to pick up with Thomas and Martha and Bruce. The problem with this is that Booster Gold is only ever paying half attention to what's going on. And he doesn't realize the reason why Catwoman was in Arkham Asylum isn't because she's just like an incorrigible robber or anything like that. It's because she's an insane serial killer. And so as soon as she gets into Wayne Manor, she starts killing everybody. Alfred's the first one to fall, which is always the case. Guys, writers, can we please stop killing Alfred? I love Alfred. All right, please stop killing my main man, Alfred. Catwoman goes through there and she literally just starts tearing people up and just starts like taking everybody out. Now, of course, Batman's followed them there. And what this does is it turns into like a bloodbath. I mean, this is a massacre. Batman goes after Booster Gold and Catwoman. Catwoman goes after Bruce Wayne and Thomas and Martha Wayne, and she kills them all. Like Catwoman kills Alfred, she kills Thomas, she kills Martha, she kills Batman, she kills them all except for Booster Gold. But then you end up having Bruce Wayne who gets the shot off on Catwoman, and so Booster Gold's unconscious and everyone else is dead. And it's just like, Jesus, like this is insane. Tom King knows how to write crazy stuff. But it's cool though, because from there you basically pick up with this idea that Batman, or I guess Bruce Wayne, is now completely and totally resolved. And what he's actually doing is taking shots at Batman and taking shots at Catwoman by various statues that he's created and honing his skills. But this is really Tom King's way, or it seems to be Tom King's way of saying that like Bruce Wayne does not have the various skills with weapons use and things like that we would expect. He's literally like learning how to shoot here. And it works for what it is. And the reason why is because it fits in perfectly with the way the story is being told. That with Bruce Wayne having never lost his parents, he never had a reason to become Batman, which meant he never had a reason to learn all that kind of stuff. And so because he never had a reason, he's basically learning those things now. And so he's not as capable as we would expect him to be. But he's also got Booster Gold just kind of chained up inside this giant cave. And that's really about it. He's just kind of keeping him there. And so what he ends up doing is having guys basically clean up Booster Gold. They fix Skeets, and the response is, you're going to take us back in time. And you're going to take us back to the point where my parents died, and we're going to fix it. Now, here's the funny thing about this is the time machine of Booster Gold is not an absolute thing. You just kind of have to say like, send us back to like about this general point in time. Like send us back to this point where I did a thing. Like that's how his time machine works. And so where Bruce Wayne kind of offers out, or at least that's how Booster Gold puts off the perception that this time machine works. And so where Batman's, where Bruce Wayne's kind of like, okay, look, fine, then like take us back 10 minutes before my parents died. Then you in turn have Booster Gold. He's like, okay, we can do that. Now this is one of the funnier moments in the comics, because then like as that happens, he just kind of like, he's like, Skeets, do that. Send us 10 minutes before Bruce Wayne's parents died, and then winks. And so like you get this hilarious exchange because he's just like, Bruce Wayne's like, why did you just wink? Why did you wink? And then just kind of like this going back and forth. They're like, well, what do you mean? Like, I mean, I didn't wink. It's like, yes, you did. It's like, well, I mean, I winked, but there was a fly in my eyes. Like there was no fly there. Like it's funny to see this going back and forth. This is a moment when I say that Booster Gold works really well when he has someone to bounce off of like this. From there, like you end up having them basically jump back 10 minutes before, and then we end up finding out it's not 10 minutes before the massacre in Wayne Manor. It's 10 minutes before Booster Gold basically saved the parents of Bruce Wayne when he was a kid. And that's kind of the tragic thing here, is because Booster Gold kind of has to make this choice, right? I mean, he's kind of like, look, basically, I just have to bide time. He's got to kill 10 minutes, but he's not telling Bruce that. Bruce has no idea where they are right now. All he knows is that they're on a rooftop somewhere. He doesn't know exactly. I mean, he could kind of look around the skyline and get a pretty good idea of where they're located at. But like with this time passing, suddenly you have Booster Gold when he originally showed up here. And so you got two boosters fighting at the same time. And so of course he shows up. The intention is to basically save the parents of Bruce Wayne. But instead, Bruce responds exactly as you would expect. He takes out that version of Booster Gold. And so from there, it's like, okay, now we basically have to like let these events unfold. You end up having like the original Booster Gold facing off against Bruce Wayne alongside Booster Gold as he exists now. And all the while where this fight's taking place, you have Thomas and Martha who hear the gunshots of like Bruce Wayne when he's facing off against these two boosters. And the response is, well, things are kind of weird. So like, let's go this way instead. And they run into Joe Chill. Joe Chill, that whole circumstance unfolds exactly as we would expect it to. Thomas and Martha Wayne are dead. And this is kind of crazy because it's basically Tom King's way of saying like Bruce Wayne kind of engineered the death of his own parents. Bruce Wayne basically just kind of has to look down and realize that his parents are dead, that like there's no way to escape this. And so ultimately Bruce Wayne turns a gun on himself, and that's the end of that. And so in turn, like Booster Gold basically fixed things. And so of course Booster Gold jumps back, everything sets back to the way it was supposed to be. And then of course Booster Gold reveals everything to Bruce and says, hey, look, here's what I did and here's how I screwed up, and so on and so forth. But it's kind of cool here because this is designed to do two things: one you expect and one you don't expect. The one you expect is, it basically just kind of shows Booster Gold, despite his best intentions, usually ends up screwing things up. Booster Gold tries to do the right thing and ends up doing all the wrong things instead. But to me, and I don't know if this was Tom King's intention, but to me, this clarifies the events of Flashpoint and what Dr. Manhattan did. At the outset, people will look at this and they will say, okay, how can Booster Gold travel back in time and allow Bruce Wayne's parents to survive, and then travel back in time again and allow them to die, and things go right back to the way they were before? Like Flashpoint showed us, if you go into the past and you screw things up, like you'll change the future. But when you go into the past and you try to fix them, the future will still be different originally, like from the way it was supposed to go, because the very fact that you traveled into the past changed how the future is going to turn out. Like you've altered the course of the future, so you can never make it exactly the way it was supposed to be. You've altered the direction things are going to go. All right, here's why I think this works. If you look at Flashpoint for the way it was originally written, that logic is sound. The way that you think about that is 100% correct. It is absolutely accurate. But what DC Rebirth has said is that when Barry Allen went into the past and saved his mom's life and then initiated the Flashpoint universe and then went back in time after realizing that his mom has to die, things were supposed to go back to normal. Nothing was supposed to change, but Dr. Manhattan changed it. And so this fits in perfectly with that, because what it basically says is like, that can happen. Someone can go into the past, they can change things, realize that what they changed was wrong, go back to the past again, set them back to rights, and everything will be okay. Everything will be fine. It's the fact that Dr. Manhattan changed things due to Flashpoint. That's what really throws a wrench in the works. That's why everything seems so different now than the way it was originally supposed to be before New 52 happened, before the events of Flashpoint took place. So I wanted to throw that out there because to me it works. I think it works really, really well. I think it actually fits in perfectly. I think probably one of the reasons why Tom King may have done it like this is so that in future stories, when the whole DC thing gets lined out. We get that huge explanation from Dr. Manhattan about what he did, why he did it, and so on and so forth. And even if things don't go back to normal, this will fit in very nicely with that. It'll fit in nice and snug with everything that's been done so far, and it won't really stand out, and it won't really, be out of place. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna go ahead and bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.